You used to buy a compact luxury sedan when you got your first big kid job, a C-Class or a 3 Series to let everybody know that you mean business. But in today's world, you buy one of these. The Mercedes GLC, quiet, understated, but shouldn't be left out of the conversation. The Audi Q5, the tech-focused, serious one that has features that the other two don't, but features we're not sure you actually need. And finally, the BMW X3, the poster child. It's probably the car that comes to mind when you think of a luxury SUV this size. So we're gonna go through all the good stuff: interiors, tech, cargo space, back seats, and tell you what they're all like to drive, all before picking a winner. We're Edmunds, and we test hundreds of cars each year on the road and at our private track, so you get the most trusted reviews. If you want to know which car, truck, or SUV is the best, then stick with us. So we know the X3 quite well, and that's because we bought this exact car to add to our Edmunds one-year road test fleet. And spoiler alert, it's great, but not without its flaws. Yikes. All right, so ignore that for a second, because this interior is actually really lovely, and there's almost none of that fingerprint-hungry, shiny black plastic. They did a great job taking that out completely. And bonus points, I have a physical button for the 360 camera. There's a ton of space in here. The seats are super adjustable, including this little thigh extension, which is great for taller drivers. And because the dash is actually low in front of me, it makes everything feel airy and spacious, which is kind of hard to come by in a car this size. Now, one thing we didn't get on this car that I really wish we had is the front ventilated seats. They're a $500 option and definitely worth your money. So everything in the X3 is nicely within reach, that's a good thing. But like all three of these cars, there's not a lot of physical controls. You do get some quick function stuff in the center console, but if I want to go to change the direction of the air vent, I have to pinch it and awkwardly move it like this. If I want to turn off my air vent, I have to do it with this touch-sensitive slider. It does work, but it feels a little overkill. Now, when it comes to tech, I get 2 USB-C ports up here and a vertical wireless charging pad to keep things nicely organized. There's this really pretty curved display in front of me, and although the software isn't super intuitive when you first start using it, once you get used to it, everything is neat and organized the right way. Now, I can also use the old school controller down here like old BMWs, but it's kind of redundant. It's just much easier to use everything as a touchscreen. Quick tip here, if audio matters to you, be sure to find an X3 with the optional $875 Harman Kardon sound system spec. This car doesn't have it, and let me tell you, the bass system sounds pretty bass, and not in a fun subwoofery kind of way. Those are the kinds of details that we look for, and if you want to see all the details of these cars in this video, be sure to head over to edmunds.com, and you can also see how they rank amongst their competitors. And when it comes to small item storage, the X3 has a decent center console, but not great. Let's see how the water bottles do. Normal size one, no problem. The I'm thirstier version, also good. But when we get to Giganto bottle, no good. But wait. The door pockets in this thing are actually fantastic. The big water bottle fits, and there's a separate pouch for my phone. There's some hits and misses when it comes to interior materials. The synthetic leather on these seats is really soft, and it feels much better than the other two cars. But what is up with the control pod over here? I can wiggle it with one finger, and I'm pretty sure I could snap it off if I wanted to. That's not acceptable in a RAV4, let alone a BMW. The space in the back of the X3 is actually pretty good, although there's less room on paper than the other two cars. But I can put my feet all the way underneath the seat in front of me, and that makes it feel roomier than it actually is. One big bummer here is that I can't recline the rear seat, so it's kind of upright, although the seats themselves are really nice and supportive. Down here, I do get 2 USB-C ports to charge my phone. However, if you want rear heated seats and rear temperature controls, that's a $700 option. Buyers with kids will appreciate that the doors open nice and wide, which helps when you're getting a car seat into the car. And it's also easy to find the anchors and the tethers, but you might have to scoot the front seat forward a little bit because things can get kind of tight. So the X3 has the most cargo space out of the 3 cars here today, and you can see just how easily it takes a giant suitcase. You also get extra storage on this side and over here in the trunk. Now here's the bad news. You can't fold down the second row from the trunk area. Instead, you have to go around and do it from here. and that is kind of a pain. So the BMW X3, to put it really simply, this is the one you buy if you like driving. From behind the wheel, this will put the biggest smile on your face. All right, starting with the powertrain. The good is that this is quick, it is punchy, and it is efficient. It's also the loudest of the three. I actually get a little bit of noise in the cabin, which I like. The bad news is that this has the worst engine start-stop system by a long shot. Not only is it really lurchy when you leave a stop sign, but you have to have a doctorate to figure out how to turn it off. It's not just a button on the dashboard. Instead, you have to go into a menu, then a sub-menu, and then find it within there. So you'll get used to doing that, and you're gonna want to, because it is really annoying. The ride quality strikes a really nice balance between still being connected to the road, but it's super supple. And I think a lot of that also has to do with the nice amount of sidewall that you get on the tires. It's super good over bumps. The steering in the X3 is light, but it's accurate. You know exactly what you're doing. This car is by far the most competent of the three when it comes to going around a corner. And if you're driving it quickly, this thing can hang. It actually really surprises you. And remember, this is the X3 with the 4-cylinder. The one with the 6-cylinder is even better. This probably does have the most road noise of the three that enters the cabin. And like I mentioned earlier, you actually can hear the engine. But to me, it's a good noise. It's not like a raspy 4-cylinder that's gonna bother you all the time. In true BMW fashion, the brakes are really easy to modulate, and the panic stop situation wasn't bad either. As I've already mentioned, the X3 is the only vehicle here that does offer hands-free driving on the highway. This particular car doesn't have it, but it's nice to know that you can spec it if you do want it. And overall visibility in the X3 is good. We've already mentioned that the dash sits down below, so you have a great view out the front, and the glass is very tall looking backward too, so there's no major blind spot that gets in my way. And of course, the 360 camera, which you can activate right in the center console, is very helpful when you're parking. And some bonus points for the X3, it is the most efficient car here. It gets 29 miles to the gallon combined in the 4-cylinder model. That's pretty good. So the X3, comfortable, efficient, bunch of cargo space, great to drive. But what about its rivals? So with the GLC, Mercedes is trying to distill the luxury and the elegance of its larger models like the GLS into a smaller form factor. And with that, they're mostly successful. Look at this dash, case in point. The open pore wood has this beautiful texture and it just looks really elegant. And it's not just the wood on the dash either. The padding on top of the dash here, on top of the door panels, everything around me looks and feels very expensive. There's even a little satisfactory clicking noise when you move the AC vents. So let's move on to the tech. First thing I'm going to point out is that I would much rather have physical controls for the climate stuff, but at least in the GLC, it's in front of you at all times. You don't need to dig into a menu like you do in the other two cars. The voice controls are also surprisingly helpful. Change my temperature to 62 degrees.
Okay, I'll set the temperature.
Thank you very much. It's actually pretty quick. Now, this whole vertical screen stuff is sort of going out of style in the industry, but I have to say, wireless Apple CarPlay still looks really good, and it's very easy to play with here the way I'm sat right now. Other things we love are the optional Burmester audio system that is a must-have in the GLC, and there are a few different ways you can charge your phone. There are 2 USB-C ports in here, and a third one tucked away in the center console. I have nothing to complain about when it comes to the front seats. They're supportive and they give you a great driving position in this car. There's also a thigh extension, which helps if you're a taller driver, and this one is even power operated, unlike the X3. But when it comes to small item storage, let's see how we do in the center console. The console itself isn't huge, but it'll definitely get the job done with some of your smaller stuff. Normal size water bottle fits no problem. A slightly larger cup, that'll get in there too, but of course when we get to our friend, the humongous water bottle, no good. The good news is that it will fit over here in the side pocket. One final thing to mention here, there is a wireless charging pad for my phone. Good job, Mercedes. But as you can see, if you have drinks, it's pretty hard to get to. Not super practical. So backseat in the GLC, some good and some bad. Let's start with the positives. The headroom is actually really plentiful, and just like in the X3, I have a place to slide my feet underneath the seat in front of me. It's actually really spacious. Let's move on to the not so good. Also, like in the X3, I can't recline the seats back here, and the positioning is a little bit upright. There's also no place to charge my phone. Mercedes charges you $300 to add USB-C ports back here. It's a little ridiculous. And when it comes to installing car seats, I love that they have these little rubber pieces instead of the plastic ones that fall off and then you just lose them forever. But like the BMW, if you're installing a rear-facing car seat, people sitting up front might lose a little bit of legroom once you get the thing installed. So the GLC has the least amount of cargo space of the three cars here. But that said, it can still handle a big suitcase, no problem. It's the taller items that are going to get you because this opening is just lower than the other two cars. There's also a little extra storage on the side, and it comes with a net to protect your items. And unlike the X3, there's a button here and there's a button here, so you can fold down the second row from the trunk area and get lots more storage. So what's it like to drive the Mercedes GLC? This one is without a doubt the least sporty, but it does have some strong points. Ride quality, however, is not one of them. I want to say this isn't horrible. It's not, super harsh, but it's the busiest. You go over bumps in the road and the body's kind of all over the place. It is without a doubt the worst ride quality of the three here. Let's talk about the powertrain, because the GLC is arguably the best of the three cars here. Not only did it match the X3 in acceleration on our test track, but when it comes to everyday, normal driving like this, it just has great manners. There's a big distinction in how loud, or rather not loud, this engine is. You can barely hear it operating. And that also means I'm giving it my unofficial award for the best start-stop system here. You can turn it off with an easy button press if you don't want it, but when it is working, you can barely feel it happening. Roll up to a stop sign, engine kicks off, and when you start going again, kicks right on, but it's like it never happened. Now, yes, the engine is quiet and well behaved, but the rest of the car is too. Wind and road noise are super well maintained. Those are very important things to have when you're driving a luxury SUV like this. And when it comes to handling, the GLC isn't incredibly dynamic, but the thing that stands out to me is just how light the steering is. I can control this car with one finger at the top of the wheel. It's a big difference between the other two cars, and if you're somebody who prefers very light, kind of feathery inputs, the GLC is for sure your car. Unlike the Audi's on-off switch brake pedal, the Mercedes is a lot easier to modulate. You have to put your foot pretty deep into the pedal to get the car to slow down. But in an emergency stopping situation, which we test at our track, this car did the best and by a pretty significant margin. So if you're needing to stop quickly, the Mercedes is your best bet. Then the Mercedes has pretty much all the driving aids you can ask for. It does not have hands-free driving, only the X3 does, but they are easier to activate than the Audi. It's an on button here and an off button here for the adaptive cruise. That's a lot better. So the GLC does 26 miles to the gallon combined. That's only one better than the Audi Q5. So not incredible, pretty average fuel economy. But like the Audi, this car does have a plug-in hybrid option. So the Audi and the Mercedes do, the BMW does not offer that. So if you want extra good fuel economy and you're interested in a plug-in hybrid, you can consider the GLC. So the GLC is quiet, it is luxurious, but it's probably not gonna light your pants on fire from behind the wheel. The Audi Q5, the newest of the three, the most expensive of the three, but the best? Not exactly. This drives me nuts. The grab handle to get into the car is awful. They put all of the mirror controls up here, so I can't grab there, and down here it is super wide. I have to have like huge shack hands just to grab it and shut the door. But the good news is that that is about the only thing I don't like in here. So the Q5 is not afraid of screens, that is for sure. But this is just as crisp and beautiful as the other two cars. The distinction here is that the software design is a lot darker. Everything is just black and kind of moody. If you're one of those people who likes using your phone or laptop in dark mode, you're gonna love this. Big points for wireless CarPlay. The connection is quick every time and it takes up the entire screen, super easy to interact with, and actually adds a little bit of color too, which makes things happier. Down here, we do have the climate control systems. Tell me if you've heard this before. We'd prefer to have physical controls here, including for the fan speed, because you have to go into an extra menu and it just gets a little bit cumbersome. You do get some physical controls though. I get a real volume knob, yay! And I get a button to turn off the auto start stop system, and trust me, you're gonna want that. So let's talk about the center console and small item storage in the Q5. The console itself is pretty tiny. You're not gonna fit a lot of stuff in there. And then when we get to the cup holders here, the average size water bottle fits no problem. The bigger cup, also not bad. But the big water bottle here, don't even think about it. Now it will fit over here in the door, but it takes a little extra while to finagle it because the door pocket is smaller in this car than it is the other two. The good news is that I can take my phone and throw it in the wireless charging pad or use the two USB-C ports and not break my wrist like I'm in the Mercedes. So something you notice after driving this car for a while is that everything feels pointed at you, the driver. It makes me feel like the interior is wrapped around me, and that's good because I feel like the main character, but it can be a bit isolating for somebody sitting in the passenger seat. And this is Audi's solution for that. Now, when I first saw this, I thought it was just creative ambient lighting, but turns out it is a full passenger infotainment screen, and it comes standard on the highest trim level of the Q5. There is some really cool stuff in here. I can play a little go-kart game, that's fun. I can also go to YouTube and watch videos. And by the way, when you're driving, this actually blacks out so the driver can't see it, only I can see it. Then there's some less functional stuff like karaoke, for example, because who doesn't want to sing happy birthday while you're driving along? And then it's a German car. I can also read the online owner's manual if I choose to, because Audi likes to have fun. So if you're somebody who has rear seat passengers frequently, the Audi has some real advantages over the other two cars. For one, I can slide the seat back and get a little bit of bonus legroom, and wait for it, I can recline too, create a little bit of a nicer angle to hang out for a long drive. That's a nice thing. In the middle here, I have two places to charge my phone, and then both of the other two cars have these as options, but the Audi is the only car that has it here. I have heated rear seats and rear temperature control. And when it comes to installing a car seat, there's nothing with the Q5 that should really get in your way. The latch anchors down below are very easy to access just by lifting the little flap, and the door is nice and wide. So the Q5 does have less cargo space than the X3, but it also has more tricks back here, starting with the underfloor storage. There is quite a bit of extra room that neither the X3 nor the GLC actually have. But like those two cars, this can fit back here, no problem. You can also fold down the back row of seats from the trunk area, which is a nice added touch. And because the Audi has air suspension, you can squat down the back, which is easier if you need to load heavy items into the car. The downside is that it takes a really long time. It's still going down as I say that. So this is the Prestige trim level, and with that you get air suspension. It's nice, it's comfortable, I like it a lot, but as I've been driving these three SUVs throughout the week, it doesn't feel that much better than the other two. So we're gonna file that option under nice to have, but don't need to have. So perhaps my biggest takeaway with the Q5 is that it's difficult to drive smooth. There's a couple parts to that. The first is the start-stop system. I like that there's a button to deactivate it right here, so at least that part is easy. But when it's on and you come to a stop sign, for example, the engine kicks off, and then when you start going again, it kind of sticks for a second and then lurches forward. It's kind of annoying. And then when I'm driving along, just like this, with the gas pedal, I have to put my foot really far into it to get the car to wake up and move along. But then with the brakes, it's everything all at once at the top of the pedal. They're opposite of each other. You get used to it as you spend more time with the car, but it could be a lot smoother. And that's important in a luxury SUV. Now, everybody who's driven this car this week has come away pretty impressed with how the Q5 handles, myself included. It's not gonna blow your mind. There's still a little bit of body roll, and it generally just feels like a somewhat heavy SUV, but it's good. The SQ5, on the other hand, is much better. So another feature you get in the prestige trim level with the Q5 is laminated glass up front. This is the only car of the three to have it. And it does make a difference. This is a very quiet, comfortable car. Right now I'm just doing typical city speeds and there's really no issue. Highway is the same deal. There's a bit of road noise, but when it comes to wind noise, nothing. So when it comes to the Audi's driver aids, I have a problem with it. It might just be a me thing, but the cruise control stock is down here, which just feels so old-timey. You have to futz with it and figure out how to get it activated, then you're checking the screen and making sure it's working. I'm so used to cruise control just being a nice, simple button on a steering wheel that it just doesn't make sense why they have it. The Q5 also does not have hands-free driving on the highway, which is something that the X3 does have. When it comes to visibility, the Q5 has a fantastic view out over the hood. It slopes down nice and low so I can see everything. And the view out back is actually fantastic as well. There's a ton of glass and very few blind spots. And like I've mentioned before, there's a button right here to activate the 360 camera, which is a huge help when you're parking. Now, I hate to end on a bummer here, but the Q5 isn't exactly efficient. It gets 25 miles to the gallon combined, which is the worst of any SUV in this test. In fact, the X3 with the 6-cylinder that has about 130 more horsepower than this gets better MPG. Not great. The takeaway here is that the Q5 is difficult to drive smoothly, and that is a big no-no for a luxury SUV. So the X3 is a little over $50,000 to start, and this rather conservative spec is about $56,000. Yes, that's a lot of money for anyone, but when we look at the numbers, the BMW is actually a couple grand cheaper than the other two. Plus, although these all have the same pretty basic 4-year, 50,000-mile warranty, BMW gives you 3 years of free maintenance for stuff like oil changes and tire rotations. A couple grand less than the others with comparable features. We would pay a bit more money to add the good sound system and the hands-free driving. There are a few bits that feel about a half step behind the other two, but does this car feel worth the money? Yes, it absolutely does. The Benz has the lowest base price of the three, but that's because Mercedes doesn't include all-wheel drive as standard. If you add it, this is right between the BMW and the Audi. It feels worth the cash though. You never feel like you're driving the cheap Mercedes. It's the real deal. The Audi is the most expensive, both for the entry-level car and the one we have here. There are some fancy features here like the configurable lighting, the passenger screen, and the air suspension, but none of them really elevate the Q5 over its peers, so pricing is a real valid criticism here. Picking a winner was actually pretty easy this time around, thanks to the always thorough Edmunds rating process. To review, here's all the individual scoring that makes up our overall rating. So after giving all three our usual shakedown, the Audi Q5 scores a 7.1, the GLC a 7.3, and our winner, the BMW X3, a 7.5. While both the Mercedes and the Audi deliver their own individual wins, it's the BMW X3 that delivers the best overall experience, and that's why we have it firmly placed at the top of this SUV category. If these videos are helpful to you, hitting like and subscribe goes a long way. And which one of these SUVs would you spend your own money on? Let us know in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching.